Hey, good morning. Welcome to the Stokastic.com NFL Showdown Strategy Show. Dave Loughran, Matt Gajewski. Good game. Thursday night football. Two teams atop the NFC East. Two 7-win teams. Eagles, Commanders. Should be a fun one. Short rest, obviously, for both of these teams. And we're going to have some fun with it. Matt, what's going on, brother?
Not much. Really excited for this game. It's a fantastic one. Not one that was probably expected to be fantastic at the beginning of the year, but Washington vastly outperforming expectations. This sets up as a good one, man. I'm excited. How are you? Your Eagles are on the slate.
Yeah. It's either going to be a good night or it's going to be a bad night. So we'll see. But no, we'll have some fun with it. A lot to get into. I'm excited for this game. A lot of top tier talent for sure. Maybe a little bit of value. I don't know. We'll find out. I mean, look, we we pride ourselves on trying to find that value, right? When it comes to this show, when it comes to these single slates, like I'm not saying he went nuclear or anything, but we were pretty adamant that Davis Allen was the guy, and and Parkinson was going to start seeing a pretty precipitous decline. Guy didn't see a target for two straight games, hardly saw the field. Davis Allen ran routes on 44 of 50 dropbacks. Maybe there's something. I'll say from the initial research I've done, I just did the betting video as well, trying to comb through some of these props and stats. There isn't a ton that stands out about either of these teams where you go, hey, that might really change, or that looks like it's really changing over the last couple of weeks. Maybe you see something differently than I do, though.
I think the only thing really is just how bad Dodson has been. And then at some point, maybe they give a look to some of their rookie receivers, which they probably should. Dodson has been very, very troubling, but they might not need to anyway. One thing they did last week was use Calcaterra. So I think the only real potential role changes are just at these really peripheral receivers for both of these teams, which we'll get into, but not like Monday where we saw a clear trend that we could project moving forward. There's nothing like that. It's all going to be a little bit more projecting today if you want to go there.
Yeah, I don't know how much of it's actionable. I'm with you. Unless it's like, do they start working Will Shipley in more? Does Johnny Wilson get another end zone target? Those are the type of gross things that we start to look at. But it won't be fun. Great slate, a lot up top. Let's get into it. Happy to have you guys with us as always. Appreciate you. If you don't mind, could you take a single second, atone for your sins this morning? Help us feed the algorithm. Hit that thumbs up. Subscribe to the channel. Leave a comment down below. It's free to subscribe. It's free to hit the thumbs up. It's free to hit the comments as well. And if you hate this show, hit the thumbs down, but make sure to do it twice. Let's go. Talk a little bit of football here. I ran the Sims. I assume you did as well. My guess is that Jordan did it on top of that. We have the top plays in single game showdown tool that's going to give us an idea of where the edges are from an ownership and a leverage standpoint, both at captain and in the utility spots. So I think we're good to go, Matt. I'll throw this over to you. Where should we start on a slate like this where you've got a few top dogs, Brown, Barkley, Jalen Hurts, Jaden Daniels? If you wanted to include Terry McLaurin in that conversation, I suppose you could. And then it kind of just falls off.
Yeah, I think maybe starting with some roster construction and then trying to parse through the studs before filling it out with the guys that we're using to make it work. When I first ran The Sims this morning and just built some lineups by hand, the main thing I found was you could pretty easily play three of these studs, assuming you put one in captain. Playing a fourth is where things get tricky. You could do it if you want to punt it off twice, but I didn't get a ton of those lineups. So all those guys you mentioned at the top, I think most constructions are probably going to parse their way through three of them and then fill it out with the mid price and maybe one punt option at the bottom. Is that a lot of what you were seeing?
Definitely. Yeah. It's a lot different roster construction than a lot of these other games we've seen. And you got some real priorities up top without question. I mean, you look at the four guys of 10K plus in the flex: Hurts, Barkley, Daniels, and Brown. Those guys are slate breakers. They're game wreckers from an offensive standpoint. And then you get down to like Devonta Smiths and Brian Robinsons and Terry McLaurin in that next range. Austin Eckler is clearly overpriced now that Robinson is good to go. Kind of returns to a different role here.
Someone's at my door. You're going to have to continue. I'll be right back.
Go
I knew
ahead.
this was going to
Hopefully,
happen.
hopefully everything's okay. Yeah, like it's a really tiered slate, right? TIERED slate, where you've got the clear top tier, then you've got that 8 to 9 range with 4 guys in it. One of them who I think is, pretty much unplayable unless you're just trying to get wildly different. Like I'm looking at my exposures right now. Do I have any Eckler? I have no Eckler right now. Shouldn't be surprising. He's very expensive. And then in the 6K range, it's the dead zone, Matt. You've got your dead zone. But I do think we have one guy in that dead zone that looks okay, and his name is Noah Brown. He hasn't been special, but the guy's running routes on essentially 100% of dropbacks. He has the same role as in being on the field as often and running as many routes as Terry McLaurin.
Thanks for covering that.
Sure.
Yeah, in the dead zone, Noah Brown, I think, does make some sense, which is a bit of a surprise considering he came over from Houston basically like right before the season started. But you now have at least 6 targets in 3 straight games. The routes are all there. I did get a fair amount of Noah Brown just as sort of a glue to lineups because you can't play all the studs today. And there's really only 2 guys in this price range unless you're willing to sacrifice and go down a little bit further to kickers, defenses, stuff like that. It's kind of just him and Goddard. So I ended up with a fair amount of him. I'm completely fine with him. He's the very clear pass catcher 2 in this offense right now.
What do you make of God? And yes, I'm with you. There might be a little bit of sticker shock being like, man, why is Noah Brown that expensive? But and clearly he's not as good or as talented as Terry McLaurin. But recently they've had a very similar target share. They're on the field as much. Both of those guys are like the 2 top dogs as far as target getters go in this offense. And then, yeah, you have Dallas Goedert at 6,600. You also have $5,600 Zach Ertz. And it makes you wonder, like, is Goddard actually better than Zach Ertz today at $1,000 increase in price point?
I think so. I just think there's a gap between these guys. I think, have seen the floor for Goddard. He's only been back for 1 game, played 63% of the snaps. I see that as just like his bare minimum floor. And I think we have Calcaterra at his stone high ceiling. Like if we're going to see this change at all, Goddard is the guy that's coming up in snaps at the expense of Calcaterra. And I don't think there's any question about that. Just from a talent perspective, I'd much rather have Goddard. I'm surprised how involved he is, honestly, at this point, but I'm finding the $1,000 to get to Goddard. I don't think there's anywhere for his role to go but up.
That's fair. But it's also very possible that his role just stays stagnant.
You think Calcaterra is going to remain like this involved with Ertz?
No.
Or, excuse me, with Goddard back?
No, I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is you're still playing 4th fiddle behind A.J. Brown, Saquon Barkley, and Devonta Smith, which is crazy.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, you're asking me to decide between him and Ertz, not him and Barkley.
I'm asking you if the $1,000 in increase is worth it. And you're saying yes.
I think so, unless you absolutely can't avoid it. Then, I mean, go down and play Ertz if there's a lineup you really like down there. I prefer Goddard straight up between the 2. Like Ertz is what Ertz is. You're not getting any sort of untapped ceiling with him whatsoever. With Goddard, yeah, he's going to be 3rd or 4th in targets, but he only played 63% of the snaps last week. He has a ceiling to play like 95. And I think Ertz is like locked into what he is. You're not getting, if anything, there's downside with Ertz. They're playing some Bates, they're playing some Sinnott, the young tight ends in this offense. I don't know. 2 weeks ago, Ertz played 48% of the snaps. He's been below 70 on numerous occasions this year. Yeah, I don't know. I think the $1,000 is worth it. If you can't make it work, it's not like I'm going to absolutely bend all my lineups to get Goddard in there over Ertz. If you like what you have with Ertz, he's fine. I just think there's more upside with Goddard.
Is there any way you can get to Eckler today? Because I'm finding that price point extremely prohibitive.
No, he's the worst value on the entire slate in our projections. He's priced as if Brian Robinson is out. And sometimes they just do this preemptively. When this slate came out, there was probably some question at least on the DraftKings side, whether
Yep.
Robinson would play, even though the tea leaves kind of suggested he would. But yeah, I mean, they don't want to have like a super mispriced guy because of injury, and the slate is ruined. So yeah, he's just way too expensive for his role.
Which is wild because if Brian Robinson was out, Eckler would be the best value on the slate, even at 8K.
Yeah, they middled this and did a bad
Yep.
job both ways.
Yeah, exactly. But you know what? You can't really middle that the right way, right? Like how you basically just have to take a stand in one direction or another. Like,
Yeah, they should have just went and looked at Schefter, whoever was reporting on Sunday that Robinson's expected back next week, price
exactly.
it like that, but they didn't do that.
Yeah, you can't. You just don't see how you get to Eckler here. Another guy. Like, how much of a guy in Terry McLaurin are you getting to today? Because if you decide that you want to play Terry, for what it's worth, right now I have 10% in the captain spot, 24% at flex. Nothing crazy, but a decent amount. If you decide that you want to play Terry, that means you're giving up some of these other spots. But at the same time, like the Hurts, Barkley, AJ Brown situation, we'll get there. Let's actually break down these pass catchers for Washington first, and then we'll move over to Philadelphia because that's a tricky spot with the price points on all of these guys. You got 3 of them over 10K and 4 of them at 8,600 or higher. Really expensive stuff. For Washington, expensive Daniels, pretty expensive McLaurin. Brian Robinson's kind of expensive. And then everyone else is down there. So a little bit easier to get to this team, but they are dogs on the road on a short week. And this team they don't have a bye week until week 14, Matt.
I hate that they do that. Why do they have the week 14 buys? I think the Ravens have one too.
Yeah. Why wouldn't they? Maybe I'm missing something. Why wouldn't you just do like more weeks where 6 teams have a bye instead of all these weeks where 2 teams have a bye and you stretch the buys to week 14?
Well, 2 weeks ago, there were 0 teams on bye.
Yeah.
After some teams had already had their bye, which just made no sense.
I know.
I don't know. It's dumb. But yeah, I guess to parse the elite wide receiver studs on Washington, I know the target shares aren't probably as wide as you'd like them to be when you have an offense with an alpha like Terry McLaurin, but I'm not really that worried about it. It's not like the target shares are that condensed in Philadelphia either, and injuries have played a part in that. But Terry McLaurin, I still think, is very clearly the wide receiver 1 in this offense, and I'm willing to pay the price for him. He's still going to be, if I were to rank all of them just straight up, including the Eagles guys, behind the studs over there, but I would probably put him just 5th overall. And in the Sims, that still gives you a healthy amount of him. In the flex, came in around 29%, which is a little bit above where we have him projected. In the captain spot, around 9%, which is basically right where we have him projected, which I'm fine with. Terry McLaurin has a clear ceiling in this offense with Daniels, but I still think he's behind the other studs, which is exactly what the Sims gave me, which is something I'm going to keep.
Agreed. Lee said, Fangio's D's coming together. We don't let anything behind us. Keep it all in front. This is, Lee, I'll be honest. This is where I'm having the toughest time with this game because you can make that argument for sure. And if you look at the game against Cincy, outside of that first drive, they did a pretty good job of limiting Joe Burrow. He didn't have T. Higgins, but still. But outside of that, I mean, they faced Cooper Rush. They faced Daniel Jones. They faced Deshaun Watson. They faced Trevor Lawrence, who almost brought them back from a huge deficit had it not been for a Nakobe Dean interception in the end zone. I'm not sure if Philly's defense, Matt, is actually really good, is actually not great, or if they're good, but you've seen inflated, kind of an inflated perception of this defense because of who they've played. And I think if I had to look at this objectively, I would say it's probably somewhere in between.
I agree with you. And I think they're improving. They have a ton of young talent, especially on the back end. Even their front 7, it's full of like 2nd-year players. Some of them haven't played all that many snaps yet. So I think we saw the worst of Philly early in the season. They're turning it around a little bit. You could dig into this deeper if you wanted it to the opponents and whatnot. But I still think this is an improved defense that's only going to get better, assuming health and these guys playing down the stretch. And now it's a tough matchup. And I mean, just look at the total for this stuff. It's still 48 points. clearly we're not expecting these defenses to have that much success when we're getting near 50 points with the total.
It's a good point. And a 3.5 point spread. Yeah. On Thursday Night Football. You know, these have kind of historically been low scoring games, not this year or like Thursday Night Football games have been crazy this year. Lots of high scoring games. So then I look at kickers and I go, where am I getting the kickers? All right. Well, Zane Gonzalez, I have 35% of the flex. Jake Elliott, I have 26%. Makes sense. You're probably going to need some salary savings there. Not a ton of great value on a slate like this. You know, the more you kind of review and look over this slate and comb through some of these cheap options, Matt, it starts making sense why you start landing on a $4,800 Gonzalez, a $5,200 Elliott. You know what? Even for me, like, all right, I'll give you my two highest exposed guys under 2K. And I only really have two of them right now. Let me make sure that's accurate. Nope, not totally accurate. I only have two of them above 20%. And that is Luke McCaffrey, who is seeing, 18, 20 routes per game. Okay. He's very, very cheap. You have a rookie wide receiver who may start to see a more expanded role. I have 27% of him right now. And as you pointed out right at the top of the show, you build these lineups and might just full punt on one of these guys. The other only ran 10 routes last week, did play 60+% of snaps. I tend to agree with you that his snap participation goes down now that Goddard's been back for a second week. But at $1,000, I do have around 24% in the flex of Grant Calcaterra, because kind of where else do you go?
Yeah, I still think he's fine down there. He's just too expensive, even with the new role. When Ertz was healthy in the first 4 games of the season, his route share and snap participation was decent. He was at about 45% of the snaps collectively over that 4-game span. So still somewhat involved. Philly runs a lot of 12 personnel stuff. He's just flat out mispriced if you're going to give me him at $1,000 with no other value on the slate. I also agree with you on Luke McCaffrey. His route share and participation is right around that 40% mark. He's been a little bit below that. Perhaps it increases down the stretch, but this is also a team that runs a fair amount of 12 personnel. I think there's a better, like just saving the salary with Calcaterra makes more sense to me than McCaffrey. Once you get beyond that, I mean, we're in complete dark territory.
Big time. And it's also a little bit more difficult to try and parse things out, as you'd say, with this Philly team with the backups, when you consider that they've played in a good amount of blowouts lately where they've legitimately, like against Cincinnati, against the Giants, against Dallas, they started using backups in the fourth quarter. So when you look at Will Shipley or someone, like Shipley or even Gainwell, we saw against the Giants, if this game's competitive, their roles all shrink to maybe a little bit for Gainwell, just to kind of spell Barkley. But so many of these roles shrink to virtually nothing.
The only thing I think that leaves potential avenues for some of these guys at wide receiver is just how bad Dodson is.
Sure.
He's awful.
So do you think it would be Smith?
I don't feel strongly about one way or the other. The Eagles will use like weird personnel packages to get Wilson on the field in certain situations. Smith is like a gadgety kick returner type guy. And like when Covey went down, that kind of think that's why you've seen more Smith in the last 3 weeks. He kind of does similar stuff. But yeah, I mean, honestly, I think you see packages for both. I wouldn't project one ahead of the other in targets or routes or anything like that. So this is why it's still like optimistic to even think these guys contribute at all. Because if Dodson does take a step back and roll, there isn't really one clear player I think that benefits. I think they would both be on the field in certain areas. And honestly, some of that might go to tight ends like Calcaterra, Stoll. We just don't know. I don't think there's a clear wide receiver 3 in this offense. And what I can tell you is I'm certainly not playing Dodson.
Well, you don't even have to say you don't think there is, because I don't like, I think it's confident to say we know that there is not a clear wide. If you wanted to say the clear wide receiver 3 is Dodson based on the amount of time he's on the field, okay, fine. But also, they do not look his way at all.
And he's seeing a decreased role.
Yeah, and it's decreasing. Exactly. He had one really nice grab against Jacksonville. It was that one Was it Jacksonville or Dallas? What was the game? What was the game where Barkley had the hurdle? That was
That was
Jackson?
2 weeks ago.
Yeah, Jacksonville, right?
Yeah.
So Dodson had the great grab down the sideline. Devontae Smith had the great touchdown. And then you saw the Saquon Barkley reverse hurdle, the backwards hurdle. So he has had a couple, back-to-back games, 27 long reception, 36.
AJ Brown was hurt in that game though.
Who?
AJ Brown.
Right. AJ, yeah, right. And that Dodson reception came with AJ Brown off the field. You're right. But that speaks even more towards it. That, like, even with that in mind, he has 3 targets over the last 3 or 4 games. They're just not using him at all. He's too expensive. Dodson should be like 1,500.
Yeah, you should be in the same price range as our Calcaterras and Luke McCaffreys, which, I mean, you could argue a lot of players should be in that range. We just don't have it, but I'm with you. Give me the darts on Ainias Smith. Give me the darts on Johnny Wilson instead of paying up for Dodson. And it's not that I think those guys even have roles that contribute significantly. It's just like they're a cheaper price point, and I don't see them being all that different as dart throws. I think Smith, just going all the way down to 800 would make the most sense if you want to play a third Eagles receiver. But to your point, all the way back in the beginning, it's AJ Brown, it's Devontae Smith, it's Saquon or Goddard as the 3-4. And those guys are taking like 80% of the targets, probably more. And then whatever's left is just sprinkled between all these guys.
Yeah. Jack Stoll, by the way, is not on the Eagles anymore. For those of you wondering, don't play him. Dolphins, I think. Dolphins.
My favorite blocking tight end.
Yeah. Yeah. Jack Stoll. What other cheap options? Ainias Smith, Ben Sinnott. I guess do we just end up at the end of the day going into this slate, locking our lineups in? Do we just end up saying, you know what? Just give me just let me diversify across all of these cheap options. Like if you're playing a lot of lineups, does it just make more sense to fully diversify on the value? Because the more I look at this, the more I think that's the way it should be. If you're talking Bates, Sinnott, McCaffrey, De'Ami Brown, who's basically not playing anymore, Olamide Zaccheaus, and then on the Eagles, Ainias Smith, Johnny Wilson, Calcaterra. Do we just say, hey, we would be fools to think we know who's going to be getting more work when it might not be any of them, and we should just diversify as much as possible and not worry about like overthinking this process?
I think that's a good approach. If you want to have like some weight to this, playing more Calcaterra, more McCaffrey than the other Dusty guys makes a lot of sense to me. But then, I mean, if you're playing 150, even if you're playing 20, you're probably not just like locking in those two in 100% of lineups. You just can't build that many. So then you need to start considering other players. And once you get below those guys, I think just spreading it out makes a lot of sense. You mentioned the backup tight ends. They're on the field a lot, especially for Washington. You have about a 35 to 40% snap participation for Bates. We've seen more Sinnott lately. That's ranged from like 20 to 45%. It ebbs and flows on a weekly basis. I think we did a good job breaking down Philadelphia. I don't know who takes Jack Stoll's role. He's basically a 6th offensive lineman, so it probably doesn't matter anyway. But yeah, is this EJ Jenkins character going to play for Philly now?
Oh, I have no clue. No, I have no clue. Again, probably doesn't matter. But to your point, and the way my exposures shape up right now, I do have by far, like if we're talking cheap guys, it would be McCaffrey and it would be Calcaterra, who I'm getting the most of. And then it's just really spread out across everybody else. Someone asked us in chat, Matt, who's the Davis Allen today? There isn't one. With Davis Allen and Parkinson, we could look at those snaps and routes run and target shit. We could look at all of that, and you can see the kind of trend, the trajectory of both of those guys. Davis, I don't think either of us would have projected that Davis Allen was going to run a route on like 92% of dropbacks or whatever it was, right? But I think you can see that trend developing, and you can try and get ahead of the curve. You can try and get ahead of everyone else. That's exactly what we did. I mentioned to you, we betted at 22.5 on the under. It closed at 13.5. Sometimes You just get those spots. But with DFS, that doesn't matter. With DFS, you could lock your lineup in at 10 a.m. It's not like you get more points because you were quicker to the draw than someone else who locks it in at 7 o'clock. It's the same player at the same salary. That's a long way of me saying I don't see a Davis Allen today. I don't see somebody like that. The only thing would be go to what you're saying. Maybe Jahan Dotson sees a lot less opportunities today. Maybe this is the day where we follow that trend and Dotson is less involved and like a Wilson or a Smith ends up being the guy.
It's possible. I don't think it's likely, which is why I think playing more McCaffrey and Calcaterra makes sense. My stone favorite cheap guy, we're talking like 2K or below, is Luke McCaffrey. Between McCaffrey versus Calcaterra, I think there is more downside with Calcaterra. He'll be fighting with Ainias Smith, Johnny Wilson for like 10% of the targets on this team. Include Gainwell and stuff in there, because once you have Barkley, Goddard, Brown, Smith, they're going to take up like 80-85% of the targets. There's not much left. On Washington, I think there's some interesting things to mention. Dyami Brown, 16% of snaps in their last game. That was by far a season low for him. He might just be flat out getting phased out of this offense. Olamide Zaccheaus, 25%. That tied. He had one game with 8%, and then the 25% is tied with another game for second lowest. That also coincided with, Noah Brown playing almost every snap, Terry McLaurin playing every snap. I think that is going to be what happens most of the time. But most wide receiver 3 sets, I think that's McCaffrey. And he's just going to have better routes than Calcaterra most weeks. Even last week, 18 routes for McCaffrey. Calcaterra came in at 11. He spent a ton of time blocking. Now, game script sort of called for it. They were slaughtering Dallas. They didn't need to run a lot of routes. But that's not a risk with McCaffrey. He's not blocking on any snaps. When he's out there, he's running routes. So I would rather just find the 200, play McCaffrey. Don't feel super good about it, but that's my preferred sub 2K guy.
Yeah, me too. Connor Johnston, Matt, says it's a revenge game. I don't know why they're so low on Dotson. We see this all the time.
Okay. Play him if you want. I don't have anything to say on revenge games. Dotson doesn't control whether he gets the ball.
If the Eagles decided to force feed Dotson the ball in a revenge narrative spot, that would be crazy.
I mean, they would lose.
Look, I say it all the time, not even to hedge, but just for those of you who are in the comments, like, see, if they've fed Dotson the ball, a guy who averages less than a target per game since he's come to Philadelphia, specifically from a narrative perspective, to get revenge on the team that traded him. And he has thus far underperformed expectations immensely. Then I don't know what to tell you. Like, that's crazy. Also, they didn't send him to some shit team. Like, they sent him to the Philadelphia Eagles. So it's not exactly like revenge here is, man, got to get back at that great football team that traded me to a terrible football team. I don't know. Like you said, play him if you want. If you like the revenge narrative on Jahan Dotson, I'm certainly not going to stop you. Certainly not going to stop you. But, that's what it is. Andrew said, I don't think it's force feeding. I think it's they try to get him a touchdown. Okay, but even if that's the case, like, let's say, Andrew, let's think through this Matt, let's think through this for a second. If this is a close game, it's a 3.5 point spread. Let's say it plays to the spread. If this is a competitive football game, it's tied up, it's competitive all game. Is there a single person on the sidelines calling plays, including Jalen Hurts under center, that is like, you know what? I'd like to win this game, but we need to get Jahan Dotson a touchdown first.
Why would this be on anyone's mind? Like, when they're going through practice reports, designing game plans, they don't have revenge in mind. They're looking at the Commanders' defense and trying to exploit the best avenues to score points, and vice versa on the defensive side of the ball. I just can't think of a world where you would ever come to the conclusion, all right, this is the Dotson game. Like, these guys are playing There have been calls for like Philadelphia's head coach. I don't think it's going to happen, but he can't be messing around and doing stupid stuff like this. This is something I don't even entertain. Like, this isn't basketball. This is just nonsense. Like, don't read these stupid comments. I turned the comments off at first thing after I atoned for my sins. Saw some comments before the show even started. I was like, I'm not doing this today.
Oh man, just trying to fire you up a bit. Dodson could score. Could score.
So could a sixth offensive lineman.
That's what I'm saying. Yeah. Yeah. Connor Johnson said the Eagles gave up a 3rd-round pick for Dodson. Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Right. So they should bench him in this game. The revenge narrative should be the Eagles organization getting revenge over Dodson and not letting him see the field today.
Listen, man, the Eagles as an organization are a team that takes shots on rehabilitation projects. They do this all the time. Sometimes they hit, sometimes you get Hassan Reddick and your team is awesome for it. Sometimes you get Jahan Dotson and it just doesn't work. Like go back, look at all of the Eagles trades. Go back 5 years, 10 years. Tell me what you notice. What you notice is like when a guy sucks, they'll cut bait with him. It doesn't matter. This is just, they're trying to buy low on a guy, see if it works out. If it does, fantastic. You have a Hassan Reddick. If it doesn't, oh well, it was a 3rd-round pick.
Dude, the perfect example of that this year that has worked out. I mean, Zach Bond has been fantastic, dude. And he was a reclamation project too.
They're also like extremely quick to move on from these terrible guys. And it's not just trades. Like Rager, they moved on from super fast. Like as soon as Wentz started declining, boom, gone.
I'll give you an even crazier one. So Bryce Huff, they gave him a ton of money and they're basically phasing him out of the defense already.
Yeah, man. Crazy. I mean, I don't see what possible data point you could look at, like a real data point, not a dumb narrative, and suggest to me that Jahan Dotson's a good play tonight. Like, I just don't think there's always the ownership game, and this will evolve through the day. So this is dynamic. I don't want to come on here and just be like, you can't play Dotson under any circumstance. There is a projection and an ownership where we would certainly consider him. And maybe his ownership just gets so low that he's a good play tonight based on that. But right now, it's not the case, mathematically.
How much Dodson do I have right now?
I don't have any.
Neither do I. Wow.
0.
Yeah, it's just tough at that price point for a guy that doesn't get targeted. Anyway, let's talk about some of these other spots. Oh, before we do, guys, we use the tools. We have them on the screen. We've won money a lot. Dude, Rick Bunting took down $1 million 3 weeks ago using the tools in the Millie. Red Skittles, 3 spots behind him, came in 4th in the Millie with the Stokastic avatar. Our own CEO, Tom Kennedy, came in 10th the same day. I just sent out 12 Hall of Fame rings. 12, Matt, yesterday for people rocking the avatar, using the tools that cash 20 plus K. I mean, doing things big around here. So not only should you be rocking the avatar, stokastic.com/HOF, and just use it wherever it is you play, finish top 3 in a field of 5,000 or more, and tweet us your wins. You can win up to 4 times in a calendar year. Big stuff. Hundreds of dollars of value, 1,000 if you hit on all of them. Thousands, I should say. And that beautiful ring. See that beautiful ring down there? $20,000 win or more, no matter the field. Look at those. Custom engraved with your name on the ring, Hall of Fame, and then the display case. Do that. But Matt, how about the fact that you can just get any of our tools, $100 core package, by signing up with any of our sportsbook partners? Link's in the description. Link is in the chat. Click that link. Go to claim offer on any of them. Hey, you want BetMGM? You're not there yet. You want Caesar Sportsbook? You want Bet365? First of all, you do 2 of those right there. You've already collected almost $400 in bonus bets by depositing $20 total. So that's out of the gate, the best part about it. But if you signed up for 2 of them, You get 2 free months of Stokastic core package for any sport you want. That's another $200 value right there. And you're getting the tools that make you a better DFS player. Whether you're using the single lineup sim to hand build lineups and get instant feedback on all of them, using our simulation tools, or you're running the sims, the actual standard sims to get the best lineups that you can possibly make and won't make by hand, or the ownership, the Discord, the player projections, the top stack, boom, bust tool, you name it. All of that is in there. If you guys are still watching the show, sitting on the fence and haven't done so yet, Matt, you said it. You said you told your friends. You actually reached out to your friends and said, if you were looking to get the tools, this is the best thing we've ever done.
Yeah, it's by far the best thing we've ever done. And like, we watch football all the time. Sometimes they want to throw in a lineup. They're not, most of my friends are not avid DFS players. But if they're going to come over and watch Red Zone or something that they want to throw in a lineup, they're like, oh, can you sim this for me? And I'm like, well, lucky for you, you can sim this yourself. And all you have to do is take advantage of the easiest promo of all time. And they're like, this can't possibly be real. I'm like, oh, it is. It is real. And I don't know how long it's going to be around. So make sure you take advantage of it.
Damn right. Link in the description. Just sign up on any of them, deposit, instantly verify yourself, takes minutes. Place your first bet with whatever you deposit. Once that's done, once that's settled, just email us at support@stokastic.com with a screenshot of your settled bet and of your welcome email and get whatever sports you want. It's that simple. So yeah, man, check it out. And imagine too, even if you're playing the mini max or some of these smaller contests, like, or even the ones where, like, if you have a certain badge on DraftKings, you can't enter. Imagine having the sims for those type of, imagine having a single lineup sim for those type of contests. You're playing against people that have no clue what they're doing, and now you've got access to the best tools that you're going to find. I mean, it's a game changer. And hit us up if you have any questions. My DMs are always open on Twitter. And in Discord, you can hit us up as well. All right, can we break down the top tier guys before we build a lineup here? Because I think we've hit everyone kind of in the mid-range and the value, right?
Yeah, let's do it.
So I really do like AJ Brown today. What a good spot this is against this Commanders D. You look at them against wide receiver ones this year, Matt, pretty insane. First of all, they've allowed the, third most touchdowns to opposing wide receivers this year, which is nice. But look at some of the game lines for opposing ones. Pickens, 5 for 91 and a score. Flowers, 9 for 132. Jamar Chase, 6 for 118 and 2. Mike Evans, 5 for 61 and 2. Chris Godwin in the same game, 8 for 83 and 1. Neighbors, 10 for 127 and 1. Even Harrison, not a great statistical game as far as yards go, but he scored as well. I might sprinkle on Brown 2 touchdowns at 10-1 today, but he looks like he's in a pretty good spot. They don't have a shutdown corner, and they don't have Marshawn Lattimore making his debut tonight either.
No, this is a ragtag secondary, and this team is better than they thought they were going to be, certainly this year, which is why you get the Marshawn Lattimore trade, because what they came into the year with in their secondary was an absolute mess. Yep. Benjamin St-Juste leads this team in coverage snaps. He's been terrible. And then Mike St. Riesel could be good. He's the young player from Michigan, but he's still extremely young. You have Jeremy Chin basically as your only good defender right now in the secondary. Everyone else is a complete disaster. So, I mean, even if Lattimore played, you could probably get away from him, but he's out. So, I mean, this is one of the best matchups you could possibly draw up. The strength of this team, Washington, is up front, not in their secondary. And I trust Philly's offensive line to be able to take care of that. I agree with you on A.J. Brown. I think he will continue to assert himself as the wide receiver one, much like he did last year. This year, injuries limited him a little bit in that regard, but he's certainly in my top 3 studs on tonight's slate. No question about it.
Yeah. Me too. One day you will have said, question for the Sims, when using the boost and exposure cap, if you don't get the ownership you want for certain players, is it suggested to boost an exposure cap again or not do it? It's nuanced, man. Like, if you're really getting nothing of someone and the only reason you're trying to boost them is because you think you have a read on how something is going to play out, like the Davis Allen spot on Monday would be a good example of somebody that you might actually change their projection. I did a little bit. I boosted his projection, but I don't want to do that and boost projection or boost somebody through the roof just to get desired exposure, Matt, unless I really think that I have a read where the books aren't seeing it and the props aren't aligning. And I think I really have a good feel that this could put me in a really advantageous spot if I end up being right. Otherwise, I'm trying not to force things too much. Like if I'm not getting anyone and I boost them by 50%, I don't think I'm boosting them to 150.
Yeah, the Sims are extremely good at identifying the good price adjusted plays with ownership factored in. Most of the changes I make are just really, it's kind of just risk mitigation, trying to not be like at 70% of a player.
So capping exposure.
Yeah, or like using uniques is a great way to do this. Not so much for showdown slates, but on main slates, using uniques will help spread that out a little bit more. There's a lot of ways to do it, and I think the ROI boosts are one way, exposure caps are another. It's rarely where I'm trying to like get significantly more of a player. Maybe it'll be like 5% or something. The ROI boost takes care of that. But there's almost no occasion where I'm going down there and trying to boost a guy I have 0 of up to like 20 or 25%. The Sims are awesome just on their own. Like you could flat out run these at factory settings, be completely fine.
Yep. Yep. Okay, so Hurts and Barkley. These guys are always tough for me to analyze. Well, that's not, no, let me put it to you this way. Let me rephrase this. These guys are tough for me to analyze from a content perspective, because the easiest answer on guys like Hurts and Barkley is just play these guys and get to a lot of them. Same thing with AJ Brown. So you don't really have to overthink the process with these guys. They have a great game or they don't, but there's nothing really to indicate that Jalen Hurts, who has been on fire lately, and is basically their goal line back once they get inside the 2, or Saquon Barkley, who's arguably been the best running back in the league, that they shouldn't be in your lineups today. Do you know what I'm saying here? It's hard to articulate what to do with these guys when the realest and easiest answer is just, yeah, you end up playing a lot of them.
Yeah, you should play a lot of them. They should be probably 2 of the 3 or 4 most owned players on the slate. I mean, the analysis with these 2 guys largely comes down to goal line touchdowns. Does Philadelphia get down at the 1-yard line, or did they get down at the 5? That's really been the difference between these 2 players this year. Last week, Saquon Barkley got down at the 1. Jalen Hurts had an amazing game. Other games where that doesn't happen, Saquon Barkley has an enormous ceiling. Like, if Jaden Daniels wasn't on this slate himself, I would say these are 2 of the highest ceiling players in the entire NFL. It just so happens that Washington also has one of those guys on the other side. I mean, if you're playing 3 studs, these are the 3 you're playing. Like low risk contests, cash games, I'm starting with these 3 guys and making the rest work. I mean, he's really, they're just both awesome plays. And the reason I like him for low risk contests, cash games, stuff like that, you just soak up so many of the touchdowns with them both. It doesn't matter who actually scores the touchdowns. You already have paths to both. And I mean, it could very well be a Saquon scores 1, Hurts scores 1. But tournaments is where I think you can start getting a little interesting with these guys. Let's talk. I have a question for you. Like Millie Maker style stuff. Are you looking to potentially do anything with Hurts and Saquon together? I do think they're negatively correlated to a minor degree. What do you think is the best approach in the largest field stuff? Because they're very clearly Saquon can't score the touchdowns that Hurts sneaks in.
I have no problems with it at all.
I think that's correct too, just because of how Saquon in a competitive game is going to play like 95% of snaps.
Exactly. Let me also explain what I mean by this. If they score 4 touchdowns, Barkley could have 2 and Hurts could have 2.
Correct.
And while they're definitely negatively correlated. I'm not suggesting they aren't. But also, Barkley has 2 receiving touchdowns this season. They actually use him on some of these wheel routes. They sneak him out there, and Hurts will look to him in the end zone. He has 3 end zone targets this season. So for a running back that's going to constantly be on the field and a rushing quarterback, like what if this game does turn into one where they just run the ball a ton? Hurts runs, Barkley runs, none of the receivers end up being optimal, and both Hurts and Barkley get into the end zone. They're very expensive, but they're both going to play the large majority of snaps. Barkley's going to get the massive lion's share of opportunities on the ground, and he actually does get targeted downfield in the passing game, even if it's only a couple times a game. That's why I don't have any issue with it. Now, on a main slate, am I paying a premium for both to jam them in the same lineup? No. On a showdown slate, 0 issues with that at all. It would have would have won me the showdown had Barkley caught that pass against the Falcons earlier in the season. That was a Barkley Hurts lineup with no Brown or Devontae Smith.
Yeah, I initially was like, oh, maybe I'm going to bring this down. But then I was like, I'm just going to let the Sims take care of this. The lineups that are good, that have them both, are going to be at the top of the Sims. I don't have to worry about this. So I agree with you. Ultimately, just wanted to hear what you thought.
Yeah, and CW said, where is this? Hurts is extremely selfish at the goal line. I imagine that when they signed Saquon, Hurts gave him the "Don't touch my drum set" speech from Step Brothers. That's pretty good. But no, he's not selfish at the goal line. It's an automatic play. When Barkley dominated the Giants and Hurts went in again, Hurts came up and gave Barkley the ball because Barkley orchestrated the entirety of that drive from start to finish. I believe if that were up to Hurts, that ball would have gone straight to Saquon Barkley. So it's an automatic play. You have to run it. You don't have a choice. This goes back to the Dodson revenge game thing. You know what I mean? Were you going to say that?
Yeah, this team that doesn't reward like Saquon for orchestrating an entire drive just defers purely to the analytics. We can't do anything but tush push at the goal line. This is what we're doing. You think that team is going to give Jahan Dotson the ball in a game like this?
Matt, orchestrating the entire drive against the Giants. You want to talk revenge? Like, Saquon Barkley made that revenge happen. They didn't even try and get him touched. They didn't. I think he scored, but they weren't trying to even get Saquon Barkley touchdowns against the Giants.
Also, like, who cares about the touchdowns? Why does the touchdown matter?
Right.
Like, Saquon Barkley had an awesome game. You think he like goes into the locker room and he's like, man, that getting a touchdown really would have made the difference for me. Everything else in this game was a real disappointment. Like, you can have an awesome game and not score. Like, who cares? Yeah. Why do you need to score?
Yeah. Yeah. Anyway. All right. Any other thoughts before we build a lineup? Devontae Smith, Jaden Daniels, obviously always a fantastic play. The rushing upside here is significant despite last week him not getting there. What do you think?
I love Daniels. The rushing equity is always going to be there. Philly's defense has improved, but you poked a lot of holes in that. And with his rushing ability, there's just so many paths to not just his ceiling, but like a good game, a solid floor game. I think he's one of the safest plays in the NFL right now. I'm not a huge Devontae Smith guy, especially when everyone's healthy for this team. Last year is a great representation of what his role could look like today. Clear second fiddle to A.J. Brown. And there are situations in certain games where this might be closer to Dallas Goedert than you want. It's at 8,600. I'm just going all the way up and finding a stud or finding my way down, working more of a stars and scrubs approach. He's not quite as dead as like Eckler or Brian Robinson in that range, but I'm still probably going to be underweight to him just with all the studs being so close in pricing just ahead of him.
I actually feel great about where I'm at on Devontae Smith. I am right with the field at captain and at flex. I feel great about that. I would love for that to hold, Matt. He doesn't kill me. He doesn't make my night one way or another. Getting around the field on Devontae to me makes a lot of sense.
That's how I feel about McLaurin. If I end up a little below on Devontae, I wouldn't be too upset.
And how about, did you mention Brian Robinson?
I just briefly mentioned him. With Eckler and Robinson out there, they're both just a little too expensive. I'd rather play Robinson. He's just been the 1A to Eckler's 1B. But it's going to be a timeshare to some degree. It's the first game back for Robinson. It's a soft tissue injury. I don't think you see like a ceiling snap game for him or touch game in this spot. They're both... I mean, this instead of being like 8.2 and 8K, they should probably be like 7.2 and 7K. They're just both a little too expensive.
Okay. Let's build a lineup.
All right, let's do it.
All right. Someone said he tried to get Saquon the single game record, though, Dave. Just as easy to see him wanting a revenge. I mean, Kenny Gainwell came in and halfway through the fourth quarter. So I don't know. That was Saquon being super selfless and said, nah, give the other guys a shot. Saquon's the man. All right, let's do it. This could be this. I have not looked at any of the lineups in the Sims yet. So this could be tough. This could be tough, man. But here's where I want to start. I want to start with AJ at captain.
I'm going to go with Hurts.
All right. So this may be a Barkley fade lineup then.
You can make them with, I mean, there's a ton of studs. You don't have to play Barkley. If you end up with Barkley and Hurts together, I don't think I'm going to do anything to limit it. But I mean, if you end up without Barkley to get Daniels, I mean, who cares? They're all really good.
Agreed. All right. You know what I'm going to do though? I'm going to go McCaffrey.
All right. Love McCaffrey.
Let's open some things up a little bit at least.
That gives us 7,600. I'm going to throw in Daniels.
All right. Can we go? If you go Barkley here, you have 1,800.
You just end up with Calcaterra and a double punt.
What if we went? Does going Devonta get us anything?
Devontae instead of Barkley.
Yeah.
Maybe a defense.
Matter of fact, what if you went Goddard here? Let's just see what happens if you went Goddard and then, like, would you go Ertz or Jake Elliott? Tough slate.
Probably Ertz, but I could see it either way. They honestly both might sim positively.
I went Goddard and Elliott to see what we get here.
All right, let's run it.
All right. And then quickly we'll build one more. Give me another captain while we wait on this.
Let's run one with Daniels. I want to see how it looks because I think he's harder to build with.
Okay. All right. We got 43%. Not bad. I can handle that. Matt, 43% on that one with just a quick build right there. All right. Let's go Jaden Daniels. Now,
because like you want to probably play Terry, right?
Probably. Yeah. Or honestly, I think you might be able to go Noah Brown here.
All right, let's try that.
Let's try Noah Brown, see if it opens anything up. I'm going to go Barkley.
All right.
Why don't we try one with Hurts and can we do it? Can we go Hurts and Barkley?
Yeah, I mean, if you go Hurts and Barkley, you're probably playing either McCaffrey or Calcaterra. I think McCaffrey makes a lot of sense in this build. And you have like a mid-price guy left. Kicker, defense, something like that.
All right. So this gives us Jaden Daniels, Saquon, Noah Brown, Jalen Hurts, Luke McCaffrey, and then you can go Elliott or Zane.
Yeah, that's awesome. This is a great lineup.
Should we go Elliott here?
Yeah, let's do it. I say it's great. Watch it be negative.
That happens to us a lot on this show. We've been on a better stretch lately, though, don't you think? We're figuring things out.
We have. I think since we've been using it ourselves a lot, we've gotten a little better at deciphering this.
All right, not bad. Almost 50%. We'll take it. Throw Zane in there as I wrap this show up, Jordan. Throw Zane Gonzalez in over Jake Elliott. See if that happens. Sir Dwayne said, thanks for the super chat. Put Dodson at captain. Yeah, I'll let you guys do that. Hey, appreciate you guys hanging out. As always, remember, any subscription down there you wanted to join, use our Sportsbook partners, sign up, click that claim offer, you're in business, or just click anything else down there. Stokastic NFL will get you there. And I should mention one more time, guys, MMA, if you wanted to get in on the MMA action this week, that link down there, forget about, you don't even need the promo code. It's Bones, but it'll auto load for you. That is a $1 promo code for MMA, with including the Sims and all of that stuff. So yeah, $1 for this, huge card coming up on Saturday, or is it Sunday? Sorry. No, Saturday, November 16th. If you wanted to get in, check those tools out. The Sims have dominated MMA. Come check them out for $1. Link to everything in the description. Again, any questions, hit us up and we will see you back here for the next one. Peace.